She was invisible until a 5-year-old boy saw what an entire room of billionaires could not. The charity auction glittered with the kind of wealth that most people only read about in magazines. Crystal chandeliers dripped from cathedral ceilings. Women floated past in gowns that cost more than annual salaries. Men laughed in clusters, their watches catching the light, their confidence filling every corner of the room. And there she was, standing near the back wall, fingers wrapped too tightly around a champagne flute she had not sipped from once. The bubbles had gone flat 30 minutes ago. So had her courage. Nadia Okonkwo was not supposed to be here. She was a final-year nursing student who worked night shifts at a government hospital just to keep the lights on in her small apartment. She owned exactly 2 nice dresses, and she was wearing one of them now. The one she had sewn herself from fabric she bought at Balogun Market 3 years ago. Her heels were scuffed from countless hospital corridors. Her handbag was practical, not designer, and her skin carried a shade darker than most of the elite gathered in this room tonight. Lagos high society was not built for women like her, yet here she stood. Because of a clerical error, her invitation had been meant for another Nadia Adeyemi, the socialite daughter of a shipping magnate who probably spent more on breakfast than Nadia earned in a month. But the mix-up had gone unnoticed at the door. The security had scanned her name, nodded politely, and waved her through the velvet ropes before anyone realized she was the wrong Nadia entirely. By then she was already inside, already surrounded, already drowning. She told herself, watch, learn, leave before anyone realizes you do not belong. So she stayed near the shadows, near the corners where the light did not quite reach, where she could observe without being observed, where she could disappear as soon as the opportunity presented itself. But some people are not meant to disappear, some people are meant to be found, and she was about to discover that in the most unexpected way possible. She felt him before she saw him. No, a stare exactly, more like a presence, a small warmth pressing against the edge of her awareness, something that made her skin prickle with the sense that she was being watched. She turned her head slowly, and her heart stopped. A boy stood there, 5 years old, maybe 6. His small frame was swallowed by a perfectly tailored navy suit that probably cost more than her rent. His bow tie sat slightly crooked against his white shirt. His shoes gleamed with fresh polish. But it was his eyes that caught her. Dark brown, impossibly large, framed by lashes too long for a child. And serious, so serious that it made her chest ache. He was not looking at the auction stage where a diamond necklace was being presented to eager bidders. He was not looking at the adults swirling past him in clouds of expensive perfume and louder conversation. He was not looking at the waiters carrying trays of champagne or the security guards stationed near the exits. Only her. As if she were the only person in the room worth seeing, Nadia blinked. Below, the boy did not respond immediately. He studied her face with an intensity that would have been unsettling from an adult. His eyes moved across her features carefully, slowly, like he was searching for something specific, something he had lost long ago and was desperate to find again. Then, in a voice so soft she almost missed it beneath the noise of the crowd, he spoke. "You look sad." Her heart cracked. Just a little, just enough to let something slip through. "Do I?" She asked it gently, no defensively, just curious, just honest. The boy nodded slowly. His expression did not change, like my mommy used to look. Used, too. The past tense landed between them with the weight of something much heavier than 2 small words should carry. It pressed against her chest. It stole her breath. It told her everything she needed to know about this child without him saying another word. "I am sorry," she whispered, though she was not entirely sure what she was apologizing for. Maybe for his loss. Maybe for her own sadness that he had somehow seen when no one else in this glittering room had noticed. Maybe for the fact that the world could be so cruel to someone so small. The boy tilted his head slightly. His dark eyes searched her face again. And then, without warning, he stepped forward closer, close enough that she could see the slight tremble in his lower lip. Close enough that she could feel the loneliness radiating from him like heat from a flame. "Can I hug you, miss?" Her breath caught in her throat. There was something devastating about the question. The way he asked it, so small, so careful, so polite, like he had been taught that affection was something you requested permission for, something that might be denied, something you could not simply take for granted because you needed it. This child had learned too young that love was not guaranteed, and that broke her heart in ways she was not prepared for. "Of course you can," she said softly. She lowered herself to his level without hesitation. Years of pediatric rotations had taught her that children needed eye contact. They needed to feel seen. They needed adults to come down to their world instead of always expecting them to reach up to ours. The boy stepped into her arms. His small body pressed against hers, and she felt him exhale, a long, shuddering breath that seemed to release something he had been carrying for far too long. His tiny arms wrapped around her neck, his face buried against her shoulder, and he held on like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting beneath his feet. She held him back gently, carefully, the way she held the children in the hospital who had no one else to hold them, the ones whose parents worked too many jobs, the ones whose families had fallen apart, the ones who just needed someone to tell them they were not alone. "What is your name?" she asked softly. Her hand moved in slow circles across his small back. "Tobias," he murmured against her shoulder. "But Papa calls me Toby." "That is a beautiful name, Toby." He pulled back slightly, just enough to look at her face again, and something changed in his expression. A decision being made behind those two old eyes. A choice that would alter the course of multiple lives, though neither of them knew it yet. "You smell like my mummy," he whispered, "like flowers and nice." Nadia's heart shattered completely. This child was not just lonely, he was grieving, actively, desperately, endlessly grieving, for a mother who was no longer there. And somehow, in a room full of hundreds of adults, he had sensed something in her that reminded him of what he had lost. She did not know whether to feel honored or heartbroken. So she felt both. "Toby," she said carefully, keeping her voice steady even as emotion threatened to crack it. "Where is your papa? Does he know where you are?" The boy pulled back fully and turned. His small hand pointed across the ballroom without hesitation. There, and everything stopped. If you have ever felt invisible in a room full of people, this story is about to change everything you believe about being seen. Stay with me through every twist, every revelation, every moment that will leave you breathless. And if this resonates with you, if you already feel something stirring in your chest, hit that subscribe button right now, because stories like this are exactly what we do here. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. No, back to the story. She followed the direction of Toby's small finger. Her eyes moved across the crowded ballroom, past the clusters of executives, past the politicians pressing flesh, past the socialites comparing jewelry, until her gaze landed on a man who commanded the room simply by existing in it. He stood near the auction stage, surrounded by other men in expensive suits who were clearly competing for his attention. But he was not looking at them. He was not looking at the stage. He was not looking at the diamond necklace that had just sold for more money than Nadia would make in a decade. He was looking directly at her, at his son in her arms, tall, impossibly tall, shoulders broad beneath a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been painted on by angels with very expensive taste, jaw sharp enough to cut glass, cheekbones that could have been carved from marble, hair dark and perfectly styled, and eyes that swept across the distance between them with the cold precision of a man who calculated risk for a living and always won. Nadia's blood turned to ice because she knew that face, everyone in Lagos knew that face, Jidena Mbefor, founder and CEO of Mbefe Capital, the youngest self-made billionaire in West African history, the man whose face appeared on magazine covers with headlines like the king of African finance and the coldest mind in business, the man whose investment decisions moved markets, the man whose approval could make careers and whose disapproval could end them. But it was not his wealth that made her freeze, it was not his power, it was not even the fact that she was currently holding his son in a public ballroom without invitation or permission. It was the stories. 3 years ago, Jidena Mbefor had been married to Adora Mbefora Mebana. a woman of grace and beauty and impeccable social standing, a woman who had given him a son and completed the perfect picture of his perfect life, and then she died. The details had been vague in the press: a sudden illness, a tragic loss, a private funeral that only the most elite were invited to attend. But the aftermath had been very public indeed, because after his wife's death, Jidena Mbefor had changed. He stopped attending social events. He declined interviews. He rejected every eligible woman that Lagos society tried to push in his direction. He retreated behind the walls of his empire and his grief and his responsibilities as a single father. And he stayed there for 3 years, becoming more myth than man, more rumor than reality. The cold billionaire, they called him, the man who buried his heart with his wife, and Nadia had just hugged his son, in public without knowing who he was. Her throat went dry, her palms went cold, her mind raced through every possible consequence of this moment, and none of them were good. Toby, a deep voice cut through the noise of the ballroom. No, loud no, raised, but carrying an authority that made several nearby conversations stop mid-sentence, an authority that made people instinctively step aside, an authority that made Nadia want to drop the child and run. The boy turned happily in her arms, his face lit up with a smile that transformed his serious expression entirely. "Papa," the crowd parted like the Red Sea before Moses, and Jidena Mbefor walked toward them. Each step was deliberate, measured, controlled, like a predator who knew he had all the time in the world because his prey had nowhere to go. His expression revealed nothing, no anger, no concern, no emotion of any kind. Just that cold, assessing gaze that seemed to see everything and give nothing in return. Nadia released the boy immediately and stood up straight. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Her cheeks were burning. Her mind was scrambling for words that might somehow explain what he had just witnessed without making her sound insane. "Sir, I am so sorry," she started quickly. "I did not know he was your son. He just came up to me and you did not know." His voice was smooth as glass, calm as still water, dangerous as a blade wrapped in silk. She swallowed hard. "No, sir, I did not." Toby frowned at her apology. His small hand reached for hers again, even as he stood beside his father. "Why are you apologizing, miss?" he asked with the innocent confusion of a child who did not understand adult politics. "I came to you. I wanted to." "Sir, I can explain." Nadia tried again. "Explain what exactly?" Jidena asked. His eyes had not left her face, had not blinked, had not softened even slightly. "I should not have held him without." "Without what?" "Without my permission." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive, something that probably cost more than her monthly groceries. "You were holding a frightened child who approached you for comfort. What exactly should you apologize for?" She hesitated. The question felt like a trap. Everything about this man felt like a trap. He was frightened. He is always frightened. Jidena said quietly, "At events like this, in crowds like this, among people like this, he does not speak to strangers. He does not approach them. He does not let them touch him." The weight of those words settled over Nadia like a heavy blanket. "He has not spoken to anyone outside our household in 2 years. Jidena continued. His voice dropped lower, almost private despite the public setting. "His therapists call it selective mutism. His teachers say he refuses to interact with other children. Every politician in this room has tried to engage him, every socialite, every family friend. He ignores them all." A pause. "And then there is you." Nadia shook her head slowly. "I did not do anything, sir. He came to me, yes." Jidena's gaze sharpened. "Exactly. He came to you. The question is why." "Papa." Toby tugged his father's hand impatiently. She was sad. "You said when people are sad we should be kind, so I was kind." Silence fell over the small circle they had created. The crowd continued around them, but it felt distant now, muted, like the rest of the world had faded to background noise. "She was sad," Jidena repeated slowly. He looked at his son with an expression that finally showed something human beneath the ice, something tender, something protective. And how did you know she was sad, Toby? The boy shrugged with the simple wisdom of children. I just knew, Papa. The same way I always know. Something passed between father and son in that moment. Something Nadia did not fully understand. But she felt the shift in the air, the slight loosening of tension, the way Jidena's shoulders dropped just a fraction of an inch. What is your name? He asked suddenly, his attention back on her. Nadia, sir. Nadia Okonkwo, Nadia. He said it slowly, testing the sound of it on his tongue, rolling the syllables like he was memorizing them for later. Miss Okonkwo, do you work for one of the sponsor companies? No, sir. I am a nursing student. His eyebrow lifted slightly. A nursing student at an invitation-only charity auction. There was a mistake with the invitations, sir. I should not actually be here. I was just about to leave when my son decided you were the most interesting person in the room. A pause. He has always had excellent instincts. Nadia was not sure if that was a compliment. She was not sure of anything anymore. Papa. Toby spoke up again. His voice carried a determined edge that seemed far too mature for his age. Miss Nadia smells like mommy, like flowers. Jidena went very still. The entire atmosphere changed. Whatever warmth had begun to creep into the conversation vanished instantly, replaced by something raw, something painful, something that Nadia recognized because she had felt it herself for years after her own mother died. Grief, fresh as an open wound, despite the years that had passed. Toby, Jidena said quietly. His voice was controlled but strained. That is enough. But Papa, she does. I could smell it when I hugged her, and Tobias. The single word carried an authority that made the boy fall silent immediately. His small face crumpled with confusion and hurt. Nadia felt an irrational urge to defend the child, to explain that he had done nothing wrong, but she also understood that some wounds were too deep to be touched by strangers. Some grief was too private to be witnessed by outsiders. I should go, she said softly. I apologize for any confusion, sir. It was nice to meet you, Toby. She started to turn away, to disappear back into the crowd, to find the exit and escape this moment that had somehow become far more complicated than a simple hug. Wait. The command stopped her mid-step, no, because of its unexpected quality. Less cold. More human. She turned back. Jidena was looking at her differently now, still guarded, still controlled, but with something else beneath it, something that looked almost like curiosity, almost like interest, almost like the beginning of a question he was not sure he wanted to ask. Toby pulled away from his father and walked back to Nadia. His small hand slipped into hers before anyone could stop him. I want Miss Nadia to stay, Papa, he said firmly. She makes me feel better. Toby, please, Papa, please, father, and son stared at each other. A silent battle of wills playing out in the space between them, and for a long moment Nadia was certain Jidena would refuse, would take his son's hand and walk away, would forget this entire encounter ever happened. But then something changed, some wall crumbled, some decision was made, some door opened that could not be closed again. The garden is quieter, Jidena said finally. His voice carried the weight of surrender. Toby does not like crowds. We were about to step outside for some air. He looked at Nadia directly. You may join us if you wish. My son seems to believe you belong there. The invitation hung between them, heavy with implications she did not fully understand, heavy with possibilities she had never imagined. Common sense told her to refuse, to walk away, to return to her small life and her night shifts and her medical textbooks, and forget she had ever stepped foot in this glittering world that was not meant for her. But Toby's hand was still in hers, small and warm and trusting, and his eyes were looking up at her with a hope that broke her heart all over again. She heard herself speak before her mind could stop her. Okay. Grief has a way of finding its own kind. If you have ever felt that instant recognition with someone who just understood without you having to explain, drop a comment below. Tell me your story. I want to hear it. And while you are there, hit that like button if this is already hitting different for you. Because trust me, we are just getting started. The garden behind the venue was another world entirely. The noise of the auction faded to a distant murmur as they walked through glass doors and into the Lagos night. Manicured hedges lined stone pathways that wound through carefully cultivated flower beds. A fountain murmured somewhere in the shadows. The humidity hung heavy in the air, but a gentle breeze carried the scent of frangipani and jasmine. Stars scattered across the sky above them, faint behind the city lights, but still visible, still present, still keeping their ancient watch. Toby walked between them, his left hand holding his father's, his right hand holding Nadia's. Like this arrangement was the most natural thing in the world. Like she had always been here, always been part of whatever small family unit they had formed. "The stars are hiding tonight," Toby said suddenly, his neck craned upward as he searched the sky. "Mommy used to say they were sleeping when we could not see them properly." Nadia's throat tightened. "What else did your mommy say about stars?" Jaidena's jaw tightened visibly, but he did not interrupt, did not shut down the conversation, just kept walking with his son's hand in his, letting the boy speak. "She said that when she went to heaven she would become one," Toby continued. His voice carried no sadness, just simple certainty. "So I could always see her, even when she was not here anymore." The words landed with impossible weight. "That is beautiful, Toby. I look for her every night," the boy went on. "But Papa says the city lights are too bright. She is hiding behind them." He paused. "Do you think that is true, Miss Nadia? Do you think she is hiding?" Nadia glanced at Jaidena. His expression had gone carefully blank, that mask firmly back in place. But his grip on his son's hand had tightened, and his throat moved as he swallowed something that wanted to escape. "I think," Nadia said slowly, "that the people we love never really leave us, Toby. They stay in our hearts, in our memories, in the way we smile or laugh or see the world. Like how Papa still makes Mommy's special pancakes on Sundays," Toby said eagerly. "Even though he burns them every time." A startled sound escaped Jaidena, almost a laugh, almost but not quite. "I do not burn them," he said with strained dignity. "You burned them last week, Papa. The smoke alarm went off and everything." The alarm was malfunctioning. Mama Tina said, "You are not allowed in the kitchen anymore without supervision." Nadia felt her lips twitch. She should not be amused. This was her first conversation with one of the most powerful men in Africa, and she was listening to his 5-year-old expose his cooking failures. But something about the exchange felt precious, felt real, felt like a window into a life that was carefully hidden from the rest of the world. They walked in comfortable silence for a moment, the gravel crunching softly beneath their feet, the fountain growing louder as they approached. Toby spotted a bench near the water and released both their hands to run toward it. He climbed up and began watching the fountain with fascination, leaving Nadia and Jaidena standing awkwardly alone. The silence stretched between them. Different now, charged with something neither was willing to name. "He does not do this," Jaidena finally said. His voice was quiet, almost private. "He does not talk about his mother to strangers. He does not hold hands with people he just met. He does not trust people." Nadia finished softly. Jaidena turned to look at her fully. His eyes searched her face with the same intensity his son had shown earlier, looking for something, testing her for something. "Yes, he does not trust people. He has not since she died. And yet here you are." "I do not know why he chose me, sir." Jaidena, his correction was immediate, automatic. Then he seemed to catch himself, seemed to realize what he had just offered without thinking. "If you are going to be interrogated by my son about my cooking failures, you should at least use my name." It was almost a joke, almost human, almost warm. "Jaidena," she repeated carefully. "I honestly do not know why Toby approached me tonight. I was just standing in the corner trying to be invisible. That is exactly why." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He was silent for a moment, gathering thoughts, choosing words. "Toby's mother was not like the other women in our circle," he said finally. "She did not care about status or appearance or who was watching. She was genuine, honest, uncomfortable at events, like tonight, because she felt they were performances rather than real life." He looked toward his son, who was now trying to catch the fountain spray in his small hands. "She used to hide in corners too," Jaidena continued quietly, "at parties, at galas. At all the functions she was forced to attend as my wife. She said the corners were where the real people gathered. The ones who had not learned to perform yet." Nadia felt something shift in her chest. A recognition, a connection. Children sense things, she said softly. When I was doing my pediatric rotation at the hospital, the quietest kids always gravitated towards certain nurses. No, the most experienced ones. No, necessarily the kindest ones. Just the ones who understood. Understood what? She hesitated. The truth felt too intimate to share with a man she had just met. A billionaire who lived in a world completely separate from hers. A stranger whose son had somehow broken through walls she had built years ago. But his eyes were waiting, patient. Open in a way she had not expected from a man known for being closed. Loss, she admitted finally. They sense it in others. Children who are grieving can recognize adults who have grieved too. It is like an invisible language they speak without words. Jidenna went very still. You have lost someone. It was not really a question, my mother, Nadia said. The words came out easier than she expected, like they had been waiting for someone to ask. When I was 8, cancer. She was sick for a long time, and then she was gone, and I remember feeling like everyone around me kept moving forward while I was stuck. Her eyes found Toby by the fountain, still playing, still innocent of the heavy conversation happening behind him. I remember how desperately I needed someone to just stop, she continued, to sit with me in the sadness instead of trying to fix it, to let me be broken without rushing to put me back together. Silence fell between them again, but different this time, warmer, fuller. That is what his therapists keep telling me, Jidenna said finally, that I should let him grieve at his own pace, that I should not push him to speak before he is ready, that healing is not linear. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a gesture of frustration, of exhaustion, of being human beneath all that expensive armor. But how am I supposed to watch my son suffer and do nothing? He asked quietly. How am I supposed to give him space when all I want to do is fix everything, make it better, bring her back? His voice cracked on the last word, just slightly, just enough to show the depth of what he was still carrying. You cannot fix grief, Nadia said gently. No one can. But you can sit in it with him. You can let him know he is not alone in it. You can show him that it is okay to miss her even when years have passed, even when the world expects you to move on. Jidenna turned to face her fully. His mask was gone now, completely stripped away. What remained was just a man, a father, someone who had been drowning for 3 years and had finally found someone who spoke his language. The tabloids call me cold, he said. The papers say I buried my heart with my wife. My business partners think I have ice in my veins. I know what the magazines say, and what do you think? She considered the question, considered the man standing before her. All sharp edges and expensive tailoring, all power and presence and intimidation, but also a father who made burnt pancakes on Sundays, a widower who still slept on one side of the bed, a man who had spent 3 years building walls to protect a heart that was still very much beating. I think grief does not make someone cold, she said slowly. It makes them careful. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, recognition, maybe even the beginning of gratitude. Careful, he repeated. You loved your wife, you lost her, and now you guard what remains of yourself and your son like a fortress because you cannot survive losing anything else. That is not cold, that is survival. His breath caught, barely perceptible, but there. You see too much, he murmured. I see what you let me see, she replied, which is more than you usually show anyone, I think. Toby came running back before either of them could respond. His pants were spotted with fountain water, his crooked bow tie had come completely undone. His serious expression had been replaced by a grin that made him look his actual age for the first time all night. Papa, Miss Nadia, look. He held up his hands, which were dripping wet. I caught the water. You are soaking wet, Jidenna said, but there was no reproach in his voice, only a warmth that transformed his entire face, made him look younger, made him look like a father instead of a CEO. The fountain was very splashy, Papa. Splashy, yes, very splashy. Nadia laughed. An actual genuine laugh that surprised her with its brightness. Toby beamed at the sound. He looked between her and his father with something calculating in his young eyes, something that looked far too much like scheming for a 5-year-old. Miss Nadia, he said with suspicious sweetness, will you come visit us? It is where I track Mommy's star every night. The request landed in the garden like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. Toby, Jidenna started. Please, Papa. She understands about stars. She understands about missing people. She should see the map. That is very kind to be, but Nadia began. I will ask very nicely, the boy interrupted. He turned to his father and clasped his wet hands together. Papa, may Miss Nadia please come visit us? I will be very good. I will eat all my vegetables. I will not put frogs in Mama Tina's shoes anymore. Anymore, Jidenna said with dangerous calm. There was an incident, Toby admitted. We will discuss this incident later, but may she come, Papa, please? Father and son stared at each other again, that same silent battle from before playing out in the space between them. Then Jidenna reached into his jacket pocket. His fingers emerged, holding a card. Simple, black, just his name and a phone number embossed in silver. He held it out to Nadia. You do not have to decide now, he said quietly. And you certainly do not have to say yes just because a 5-year-old is blackmailing you with vegetable consumption. But if you want to, if you are willing, my son would like to see you again. He paused, and I find myself in agreement with him. Nadia took the card slowly. The paper was thick and heavy, expensive like everything else about him, but the gesture felt different, felt personal, felt like a door opening to somewhere she had never imagined going. I am just a nursing student, she said. I do not belong in your world. I cannot offer anything that, Miss Okonkwo. He interrupted her gently. Nadia, my son walked past a room full of people who supposedly belong in my world. Politicians, businessmen, socialites, heirs and heirses. He ignored every single one of them and chose you. He stepped slightly closer. I have learned not to question his judgment. She looked down at the card in her hand, then at Toby, who was watching the exchange with barely concealed excitement, then at Jidenna, whose eyes held something she could not quite name, something that looked like hope trying not to show itself too clearly. I will think about it, she said finally. That is all I ask. He looked at his son. Come, Toby. We should go back inside before Aunt Chioma sends a search party. Toby's face fell slightly, but then he ran to Nadia and threw his small wet arms around her legs in a fierce hug. Please come visit, Miss Nadia, he whispered. I really want to show you the stars. She knelt down to his level, looked into those serious dark eyes that had seen too much for such a young age. I will try, Toby. That is all I can promise right now. He nodded solemnly, like this was a binding contract, like she had just sworn an oath before the highest court in the land. Okay, he said. I will wait. He took his father's hand. Jidenna looked at her one more time. Good night, Miss Okonkwo. Good night, she paused. Jidenna, something flickered in his expression at the sound of his name from her lips, something that might have been pleasure, might have been surprise, might have been the first crack in walls that had stood for 3 years. Then they were gone, swallowed back into the glittering world of the auction. Leaving her alone in the garden with a black card in her hand and the scent of frangipani in the air and the distant sound of the fountain still splashing, she should have felt relieved. The encounter was over. She had survived it without disaster. She could return to her regular life now, her small apartment, her hospital shifts, her textbooks and exams, and carefully constructed routines. But standing there in the moonlight, Nadia felt something else entirely. She felt seen for the first time in years. She felt seen. 3 weeks passed. She did not call. Every night she told herself she would. Every morning she found a reason not to. The card sat on her small bedside table, propped against a lamp that flickered when the power surged, which it did almost every evening in her neighborhood. She traced her finger over the embossed letters some nights, Jidenna Mbefor, just the name, just the number, nothing else. No title, no company logo, no indication that this simple card represented access to one of the most powerful men in West Africa. Maybe that was intentional. Maybe he was testing her, seeing if she would be intimidated by his status or intrigued by his simplicity. Maybe it was all some elaborate game that billionaires played for entertainment. Or maybe he was just a lonely father with a grieving son who had reached out for connection in the only way he knew how. She did not know. She could not know, and the uncertainty paralyzed her. Because what could she possibly offer them? What could a nursing student from a one-bedroom apartment in Yaba bring to a billionaire's world? She had nothing, was nothing, at least not by the metrics that mattered in his circles. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. From years ago, from before the sickness took everything. You are enough, Nadia, always. You do not need to prove that to anyone. But her mother had died when she was 8, before Nadia learned that the world did not agree with that assessment. Before she discovered that some doors remained closed no matter how hard you knocked. Before she understood that being enough was not the same as belonging. So she threw herself into work instead. Double shifts at the hospital. Extra rotations, anything to exhaust her body so completely that her mind could not wander to dark eyes and small hands and moonlit gardens. It almost worked. Almost, but 3 weeks after the gala, at exactly 2:37 in the morning, she walked out of the hospital after a brutal 12-hour shift and discovered that some people refused to be forgotten. The car was parked at the curb, black sleek. So expensive it looked like an alien spacecraft compared to the battered buses and danfos that usually occupied this street. Its engine purred quietly. Its windows were tinted dark enough to hide whoever sat inside, but the back window rolled down, and a small face appeared. Flower Lady Nadia's exhausted heart jolted in her chest. Toby was leaning out the window, waving frantically, his face split by a grin that seemed too bright for 2:30 in the morning. He was wearing pajamas printed with cartoon rockets. His hair was mussed from sleep. His eyes were slightly red, like he had been crying recently. "Toby," she breathed, "what are you doing here?" It is the middle of the night. The front door of the car opened, and Jidena Mbefa stepped out into the dim glow of Lagos streetlights. He looked different than he had at the gala. Less polished, less controlled. His shirt collar was undone and wrinkled. His sleeves were rolled up past his forearms. His jaw was shadowed with the beginning of stubble, and his hair had lost its perfect styling. He looked tired, exhausted actually, like he had not slept properly in days. Like he had not slept properly in 3 years. He looked human. "I apologize for the hour," he said. His voice was rougher than she remembered. Raw around the edges, he could not sleep. He had a nightmare. Nadia looked at Toby. His excited expression had dimmed slightly at the mention of the nightmare. His small hand had come up to grip the window frame. "About your mother?" she asked gently. Toby nodded. His lower lip trembled slightly. But then his chin came up with that same determination she had seen at the gala. "I woke up crying," he said quietly, "and I was calling for Mommy. But she did not come. She never comes anymore." Nadia's chest ached, and then Toby continued, his voice growing stronger. "Then I asked Papa to bring me to you." She blinked to me. "You understand," the boy said simply. "About missing people, about the sad feeling. Papa said you might be asleep, but I said we should try anyway because you are a nurse and nurses help people who are hurting, and I am hurting Miss Nadia." She could not breathe, could not speak, could not do anything except stand there on the cracked sidewalk outside the government hospital, where she worked for barely enough money to survive, and stare at this child who had crossed Lagos in the middle of the night because he believed she could help him. "Toby," she whispered. "I looked for her star," he said. His voice cracked. "I looked and looked, but the sky was cloudy, and I could not see anything, and Papa said she was still there behind the clouds, but I wanted to see her, Miss Nadia. I wanted to see her so badly." Tears were streaming down his small cheeks now, the bravado crumbling, the grief overwhelming his defenses. Nadia did not hesitate, did not worry about propriety or professionalism, or the fact that his father was watching from 3 feet away. She dropped to her knees on that dirty sidewalk and opened her arms. Toby flew out of the car and into her embrace so fast she nearly fell backward. His small body shook with sobs. His arms wrapped around her neck with desperate strength. His tears soaked into her scrubs that already smelled of hospital disinfectant and 12 hours of exhaustion. She held him, just held him, the way she had wanted someone to hold her when she was 8, and her mother stopped coming no matter how loud she called. "It is okay," she murmured against his hair. "It is okay to miss her. It is okay to cry. It is okay to want to see her so badly it hurts, but it hurts so much." He wept. "It hurts every day, Miss Nadia. When will it stop hurting?" She thought of her own mother, of the decades that had passed, of the way the grief had changed shape but never truly disappeared. "I do not know if it ever stops completely," she said honestly, "but it changes, it becomes softer. Like a bruise that fades from purple to yellow to something you barely notice anymore. The love stays, the missing stays, but the sharp pain becomes gentler. Promise, promise." She felt his breathing slow, his sobs quieting, his small body relaxing against hers. Over his head she met Jidena's eyes. He was still standing by the car, still watching them, but his expression had transformed entirely. The mask was gone, the walls were down. What remained was raw and vulnerable, and so painful to witness that she almost looked away. But she did not. She held his gaze and let him see that she understood, that she had been where his son was, that she knew the landscape of this particular darkness. Something passed between them in that moment, something wordless, something profound, something that felt like the beginning of a story neither of them had expected to be part of. Jidena walked toward them, his footsteps quiet on the pavement. He knelt down beside them, one hand coming to rest on his son's back. "Toby," he said softly, "we should let Miss Nadia rest. She has been working all night." "No." The protest was immediate, muffled against Nadia's shoulder. "I do not want to go yet. Toby, Papa, please." The boy lifted his head. His face was streaked with tears, but his eyes held that familiar determination. "She makes it better. She understands. Why can we not keep her?" The question hung in the night air, innocent and devastating all at once. Jidena looked at Nadia, searching for something, permission maybe, or understanding, or simply confirmation that he was not completely insane for showing up at her workplace in the middle of the night because his 5-year-old demanded it. "I drove past this hospital 17 times, he said quietly. Nadia's heart stuttered. "Over the past 3 weeks, I knew where you worked. I found out the day after the gala." He paused. "I kept thinking of reasons to stop, kept finding excuses not to, and tonight." He looked at his son, still clinging to her like she might disappear. "Tonight he woke up screaming for his mother," Jidena said, his voice caught. "And then he asked for you, a woman he met once, a stranger who held him for 5 minutes in a garden and somehow became the only person he wanted to see." His hand came up, hesitated in the air between them. Then gently, so gently, his fingers brushed a strand of hair away from her face. The touch was electric, brief but charged with meaning she was not ready to examine. "I do not know what you did to earn his trust," Jidena murmured. "I do not know why he chose you, but I have spent 3 years watching my son retreat from the world. 3 years watching him become smaller and quieter and more afraid with every passing month. And then you appeared, and he opened." "I did not do anything special," Nadia whispered. "You did everything." His eyes held hers. "You saw him, really saw him. You did not try to fix him or distract him or rush him through his pain. You just held space for his grief." He paused. "No one has done that for him since his mother died, including you." The words escaped before she could stop them. Honest, perhaps too honest. But she was exhausted and emotional, and her filter had dissolved somewhere around hour 10 of her shift. Jidena's expression flickered pain, recognition, guilt. "Including me," he admitted, "because I did not know how. Because my own grief was so overwhelming that I could barely breathe, let alone help him through his. Because I failed him." "No," Toby said suddenly. He lifted his head fully now, looking at his father with a fierce protectiveness that seemed far too mature for a 5-year-old. "You did not fail me, Papa. You just got lost in the sad too." Jidena's breath caught audibly. "But Miss Nadia can help us find our way out," Toby continued. "She knows the map. She has been to the sad place, and she came back. She can show us how." Nadia felt tears prick her own eyes. "Toby," she said gently, "I am not pleased." His small hands cupped her face, just like a child would, open and trusting and completely unaware of social boundaries. Please, Miss Nadia, we need you. Papa needs you even if he does not know how to say it. And I need you because you understand about the hurting, and you do not make it feel shameful. She was crying now. She could not help it. The exhaustion and emotion and sheer weight of this moment breaking through every defense she had built. She looked at Jidenna, really looked at him, past the expensive clothes and powerful presence and tabloid reputation, past the walls and the grief and the careful control. She saw a man drowning. She saw a man reaching for something to hold on to. She saw a man who had just watched his son trust a stranger more in 5 minutes than he had trusted anyone in 3 years, and was trying to understand what that meant. I am scared, she admitted aloud. The words came out ragged. This is terrifying. You live in a world I cannot even imagine. There are 100 reasons why this is a terrible idea, and I cannot think of a single reason why it is not. Jidenna stood, extended his hand toward her. Then do not think, he said quietly. Just feel. She looked at his hand, strong, steady, waiting. She looked at Toby, hopeful, trusting, waiting. She looked at herself, exhausted, terrified, but somehow impossibly wanting. She took his hand. He pulled her to her feet gently. His grip was warm, his palm slightly calloused in a way that surprised her. His eyes never left hers. I cannot promise you easy, he said. My life is complicated. My family will have opinions. The press will be merciless. There will be days when you want to run back to this sidewalk and pretend we never met. Then why should I stay? Because he stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, the reality of him, the undeniable solidity of him. Because my son trusts you, because I have not felt anything except grief and duty in 3 years, and standing here with you, I feel something else. Because I do not want to keep building walls. I want to build something new with you if you will let me. Toby squirmed between them and grabbed both their hands. Say yes, Miss Nadia, he commanded. Say yes, so we can go home and I can show you my star map, and then you can stay forever. Forever is a very long time, Toby, she said weakly. I know, he grinned. That is why I picked you, because you are a forever person. I can tell, she laughed. Broken and tearful and slightly hysterical, but real. She looked at Jidenna. He was almost smiling, actually almost smiling. It transformed his entire face in ways she had not known were possible. Okay, she breathed. Okay, just okay. For now, she met his eyes. Just okay for now. We see where this goes. We take it slow. We do not make promises we cannot keep. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. I can work with okay for now. Toby cheered and launched himself at both of them simultaneously, nearly knocking everyone to the ground in a tangle of limbs and laughter, and 3 people who had no business finding each other, but somehow had. And standing there on a Lagos street at 3 in the morning, held together by a child who refused to give up hope, and a man who was learning to hope again, and her own stupid brave heart that had somehow decided to leap, Nadia realized something. She had spent years trying to be invisible. But maybe some people were not meant to disappear. Maybe some people were meant to be found. Ever had the world try to define your story before you could tell it yourself? This is the moment everything hangs in the balance. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their narrative is not over. It is just getting started, and keep watching because we are not done yet. The first 3 months felt like a dream. Nadia learned the rhythms of a life she had never imagined. The way Jidenna took his coffee black with exactly 1 sugar cube, a habit his late wife had introduced him to. The way Toby needed his stuffed elephant arranged exactly so before he could sleep. The way the MB4 household operated with quiet efficiency, run by Mama Tina, who had been with the family for 2 decades, and who watched Nadia with knowing eyes that missed nothing. She did not move in. They agreed that would be too fast. But she was there more than she was not. Weekend mornings making breakfast with Toby while Jidenna pretended to supervise, but mostly just watched them with an expression she was learning to read. Afternoons helping with homework. Evenings walking through the garden that had become their place, their sanctuary. Toby flourished. His therapist called it remarkable. His teachers sent notes home marveling at his transformation. The silent, withdrawn child who had spent 2 years building walls was suddenly talking, laughing, playing with other children, living in ways he had not since his mother died. Jidenna flourished, too, though he would never use that word himself. The ice that everyone associated with his name began to thaw, slowly, imperceptibly to most. But Nadia saw it. The way his shoulders relaxed when she entered a room, the way his jaw unclenched when Toby laughed, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, when he thought she was not looking back. They had not kissed yet, had not crossed that line from whatever this was to whatever it might become, but the tension was there, growing, building every accidental touch, every lingering gaze, every moment when they stood too close, and neither moved away. It was only a matter of time, and time, Nadia was learning, moved differently in Jidenna Mbefor's world. The Mbefor family dinner invitation arrived on a Thursday. Jidenna mentioned it casually over coffee, as if it were not significant, as if his entire extended family gathering to meet the woman his son had attached to was just another scheduling item. "My mother is hosting," he said. "Next Saturday. She would like you to attend." Nadia's stomach dropped. "Your mother, she has heard about you." He paused. "Everyone has heard about you." The way he said it made her blood chill. "Jidenna," she started carefully. "Your mother, what does she think about us?" His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. "My mother has opinions about everything. That does not mean those opinions matter. That is not an answer." He set down his coffee cup. His eyes met hers with that directness she had come to both love and fear. "My mother loved my wife," he said quietly. "They were close, perhaps too close. When Adora died, my mother lost a daughter as much as I lost a wife. She has not recovered from that grief." He paused. "She will not be unkind to you," he continued. "She is too well bred for that. But she may not be warm either, and there may be comments, questions, implications about me, about us, about my choices, about what she perceives as appropriate mourning periods and appropriate partners and appropriate everything." Nadia absorbed this, the warning beneath the words, a protection woven through the honesty. "I can handle difficult," she said finally. "I work night shifts in a government hospital. I have handled difficult." Something flickered in his expression, almost admiration. "Yes," he murmured, "I imagine you can." The Mbefor family home was everything Nadia had expected and nothing she was prepared for. A mansion in Ikoyi that took up half a city block, gates that opened onto manicured grounds that could have housed 3 of her apartment buildings, staff in formal uniforms who moved with silent efficiency, art on the walls that probably cost more than her education. She wore her best dress, the one she had bought with 3 months of savings for her graduation, that was still a year away. Jidenna had offered to have something made for her, but she had refused. She would enter his world as herself, in clothes she had earned, or she would not enter at all. Toby held her hand as they walked inside, his grip tight with unusual tension. "Do not worry," he whispered. "I will protect you." The sweet, fierce loyalty of it nearly undid her. Jidenna's hand found the small of her back, a brief touch grounding. "We do this together." The family was gathered in a living room the size of her entire apartment. Aunts and uncles, cousins, extended relatives whose names she would never remember, all of them turning to look as they entered, all of them assessing, judging, drawing conclusions before she had spoken a single word. And in the center of it all, holding court from an antique chair that might as well have been a throne, sat Addis Mbefor, Jidenna's mother. She was beautiful in the way that expensive maintenance and impeccable genetics combined to produce. Mid-60s but looking a decade younger, silver hair styled perfectly, designer clothing that probably cost more than Nadia made in a year, and eyes that held all the warmth of the Atlantic in winter. "Jidenna," she rose with practiced grace. "And this must be the young lady we have heard so much about. Mother," he kissed her cheek formally. "This is Nadia Okonkwo." Nadia extended her hand. It was taken briefly, limply, dismissed, yes. Adiez's eyes travelled over her with the kind of scrutiny that made Nadia feel like a specimen under a microscope. "The nursing student." "Yes, ma." My grandson has become quite attached to you. He is a wonderful boy. He was a wonderful boy before you appeared as well." The correction was gentle, elegant, devastating. Nadia felt Jidenna stiffen beside her. "Mother, I am simply making conversation, darling." Adayes smiled. It did not reach her eyes. "Come, let us all sit. Dinner will be served shortly." The next 2 hours were the longest of Nadia's life. Every question was an interrogation disguised as interest. Where did she grow up? What did her parents do? Where did she go to school? How did she afford her education? What were her plans after graduation? Did she intend to continue working, or would she prefer to be supported? The implications were clear. You are poor. You are beneath us. You are here because my son is vulnerable, and my grandson is grieving, and you saw an opportunity. Nadia answered everything with dignity, with patience, with the composure she had learned from years of dealing with difficult patients and dismissive supervisors, and a world that constantly underestimated her. But inside she was crumbling, because maybe they were right. Maybe she did not belong here. Maybe she had been fooling herself thinking that love, or connection, or whatever this was, could bridge the canyon between her world and theirs. Toby fell asleep against her shoulder halfway through dessert, his small body warm and trusting, his presence the only thing keeping her anchored. Jidenna was called away for an urgent phone call, business emergency. He apologized with his eyes, promised to return quickly, left her alone with the wolves. The moment he was gone, Adayes struck. "You seem like a practical young woman," she said smoothly, her voice pitched low enough that only Nadia could hear. The other guests had broken into their own conversations. "So let us be practical. My son is vulnerable. My grandson is grieving. They have latched onto you because you were convenient, available, present when they needed someone. That is not. I am not finished." Adayes' eyes hardened. "My daughter-in-law was from one of the finest families in Nigeria. She was educated at the best schools, raised with the best values, prepared from birth to occupy the position she held. She belonged in our world." A pause. "You do not." Nadia felt something crack inside her chest. "I understand that this must seem like an opportunity," Adayes continued, "a chance to escape your circumstances, to secure your future. I do not fault you for that. Ambition is not a sin. I am not trying to." "Then prove it." Adayes leaned forward. Her perfume was expensive and overwhelming. "Leave now before you become too entangled, before my grandson becomes more attached than he already is, before this situation becomes impossible to untangle cleanly. You want me to leave him. I want you to do what is best for everyone, including yourself." She paused. "I can make it worth your while. Financial support for your education, a guaranteed position at any hospital of your choosing upon graduation, a fresh start far from complications you are not equipped to handle." Nadia stared at her. This woman who had reduced her entire existence to an equation, a problem to be solved, a variable to be eliminated, and she felt something shift inside her. No, the crack she had expected, no, the crumble, but something harder, something stronger, something that had been forged in years of struggle and loss and fighting for everything she had ever earned. "With respect, Ma," she said quietly, "you do not know anything about me." Adayes' expression flickered. "You do not know that I held my mother's hand while she died because we could not afford the treatment that might have saved her." Nadia continued. "You do not know that I worked 3 jobs to put myself through nursing school because no one else was going to do it for me. You do not know that I have been invisible my entire life because people like you decided I was not worth seeing." Her voice strengthened. "But your grandson saw me in a room full of the most important people in this city. He walked past all of them and chose me. No, because I was convenient, no, because I was available, but because he recognized something in me that he needed, something that all your money and status and appropriate breeding could not provide." Adi's face had gone rigid. "I love him," Nadia said simply. "I love Toby, and I am starting to love your son too, even though it terrifies me and makes no sense and goes against every logical decision I should be making. But love does not follow logic. It does not check pedigrees. She does not care about bank accounts or social standing or whether someone belongs. She gathered the sleeping child more securely in her arms. So no, I will not leave. No, because you asked. No, because you offered money. No, because you have decided I am unworthy. I will leave if Jidenna asks me to, or if Toby no longer needs me. But not before, and not for you. Silence stretched between them. Adias's expression was unreadable. For a long moment neither spoke. Then the older woman leaned back in her chair. Something shifted in her eyes. No warmth exactly, but perhaps the beginning of reassessment. You have fire, she said finally. I have survived, Nadia replied. They are often the same thing. Another pause. My daughter-in-law had fire too. Adiz said quietly. It was the thing I loved most about her. The thing I miss most now that she is gone. She looked at her sleeping grandson, at the way his hand curled trustingly in Nadia's dress. Perhaps I was too hasty in my judgment, she murmured. Something in her voice cracked, just slightly. Perhaps I have been so busy protecting her memory that I forgot to protect her son's future. Nadia saw it then, beneath all the elegance and coldness and social armor. The grief still raw, still overwhelming, still driving every decision and judgment and interaction. You loved her, she said softly, more than I have ever loved anyone except my own children. Adias's voice trembled, and when she died I promised myself I would guard her place in this family. Make sure no one tried to replace her. Make sure her son never forgot her. Tears glistened in the older woman's eyes. But perhaps, she continued, perhaps love is not about replacement. Perhaps it is possible to hold space for someone who is gone while also making room for someone new. She looked at Nadia directly. I will not apologize for what I said. I meant it at the time, but I will reconsider. That is all I ask, Nadia said gently. Jidenna returned at that moment, his eyes moving between them with sharp assessment, reading the atmosphere, sensing the shift. Is everything all right? He asked carefully. Adias rose gracefully. Everything is fine, she said. Miss Okonkwo and I were having a conversation, Mother. A necessary conversation. She paused. Impressed me. Against my expectations, Nadia felt something loosen in her chest. Toby stirred in her arms, his eyes opening slowly. Grandma, he mumbled sleepily. Do you like Miss Nadia now? Adias looked at her grandson, at the way he nestled against Nadia like she was home, at the peace on his small face that had been absent for 3 long years. I am beginning to, she admitted quietly. And for the first time since entering this house, Nadia allowed herself to breathe. 1 year later, the charity auction was exactly as she remembered it. Crystal chandeliers, expensive gowns, powerful people gathered in clusters, discussing deals that would affect thousands of lives. But everything else was different. Because this time, Nadia was not standing in the corner trying to be invisible. This time, she was standing beside Jidenna Mbefo, his hand in hers, his ring on her finger, his son bouncing excitedly between them. Miss Nadia, look, Toby tugged her hand. He was 6 now, taller, brighter, so far from the serious, silent child who had approached her in this very room 1 year ago. There is a little girl over there, and she looks sad. Like you did when I found you. Nadia followed his gaze. In the corner, almost invisible, stood a young girl, maybe 7 years old. Her dress was clearly expensive but ill-fitting. Her eyes were too old for her face. Her shoulders were hunched, like she was trying to disappear. Nadia's heart clenched with recognition. What do you think you should do? She asked Toby gently. The boy considered this seriously. Then his face lit up with determination. I should ask if she needs a hug, he said, because sometimes people just need someone to see them. He looked up at his father. May I? Papa Jidenna smiled. It was not almost any more. These days it was real, frequent, transformative. Go ahead, he said, but remember what Miss Nadia taught you. Ask permission first. Toby nodded solemnly. And do not be too loud, because some people need quiet. He straightened his little bow tie and marched across the ballroom with purpose, heading toward a stranger, opening his heart the way someone had once opened hers. Nadia watched him go, tears pricking her eyes. Jaidena's arm came around her waist, pulling her close. "You created that," he murmured against her hair, "that kindness, that courage, that belief that everyone deserves to be seen. I did not create anything." She leaned into him. "You and your son already had it. I just helped you remember." He turned her gently, his eyes holding hers with all the love he had been afraid to feel for so long. "Marry me," he said. She laughed softly. "You already asked. I already said yes. The wedding is in 3 months, I know, but I want to ask again every day until you are certain that you belong here, that you have always belonged here, that this was always where you were meant to be." She looked around the ballroom, at the crystal and the wealth and the power that had once made her feel so small. Then she looked at Toby, kneeling beside the sad little girl, speaking softly, making her smile for the first time all evening. Then she looked at Jaidena, this man who had lost everything and somehow found the courage to love again, this man who had seen her when no one else did, this man who had chosen her not despite her differences but because of them. "I belong," she said softly, truly, finally, completely. "I belong." He kissed her then, right there in the middle of the ballroom, right there where anyone could see, right there where 1 year ago she had been invisible, and now she was everything. And across the room, Toby looked up from his new friend, and caught sight of them. "See," he said proudly to the little girl, "that is my papa and my mama Nadia. They found each other because I helped. Maybe I can help you find your person too." The little girl smiled. "How?" she asked. Toby grinned. "First I ask you a question. Can I hug you, miss?" And the cycle of healing continued. Because some people are not meant to blend in. Some people are not meant to stay invisible. Some people are meant to be found. And sometimes the quiet ones, the shy ones, the ones who watch from corners and wait in shadows, they are exactly the right ones to find you. No, despite their silence, but because of it, because they know what it means to wait for someone worth speaking to. If this story moved you, if it made you believe that love finds you exactly when you are supposed to be found, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss a story like this. Drop a comment below, tell me love finds a way. I will see you in the next one.